There's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. After more than 40 years of growing organically, and now in my 60s, I still find myself rethinking certain things in the garden. And honestly, I think gardening itself is beginning to change. Not just because of weather, or food prices, or world events, but because many people are looking for something calmer, healthier, and perhaps a little more practical in modern life. Over the last few years, we've all seen food prices rising. We've seen fertilizer costs explode after the war between Russia and Ukraine. And now, with continued instability around the world, many people are once again feeling uncertain about food, cost, quality, and the future generally. But what interests me is that more people are quietly starting to grow at least some food themselves. Not because they want to become farmers, but because they want better food, healthier lifestyles, a little more connection to nature, and perhaps a little less dependence on systems that increasingly feel unpredictable. And I completely understand that. But at the same time, I also think many people feel overwhelmed by gardening. Too much information, too many rules, too much pressure to do everything perfectly. And perhaps that's where my own thinking has started changing too. Recently, I came across a couple growing organically in South Korea, and something very simple caught my attention. When they harvested vegetables, all the outer leaves, roots, trimmings, and even many of the weeds simply went straight back onto the soil where they had grown. Nothing complicated, no obsession with tidiness, the soil simply remained covered. And it made me stop and think, nature rarely leaves soil bare. In forests, material falls where it grows, leaves, stems, organic matter. Everything slowly cycles back into the ground. So now I find myself questioning whether we sometimes make gardening harder than it needs to be. Instead of constantly clearing, moving, processing and transporting material around the garden, perhaps in many cases, we can simply let nature help us more. Even now, I'm increasingly leaving weeds on top of beds after pulling them. Not aggressive weeds, obviously, but softer annual growth, because staying in the ground until needed keeps roots feeding soil life. And once cut, that same material becomes mulch. Less exposed soil, less drying out, less work. And honestly, in a hotter and more unpredictable world, that starts making more and more sense to me. Here in the garden at the moment, there's a real feeling of transition. Some crops like onions and garlic are already outside growing away. The greenhouse is full of young plants, waiting for safer weather before planting out. The orchard is looking good this year. We've planted more trees. Wildlife is slowly increasing too. More birds, more insects, more life returning. And we've also added more water sources and food for wildlife around the garden. Again, nothing dramatic, just small changes that slowly create a healthier balance. We still make our own compost here and homemade liquid feeds too. But increasingly, I'm interested in systems that reduce effort and work more naturally over time, especially as we get older. Because I think one of the biggest problems with modern gardening online is that it often assumes people have endless energy, endless time, and perfect growing conditions. Real life usually looks very different. Most people are busy, tired, managing stress, managing work, managing family life. So perhaps gardening needs to become calmer too, more forgiving, more realistic. And perhaps that's one reason more people are becoming interested in growing food again. Not perfection, not self-sufficiency, just practical, healthier, more connected living. And honestly, after all these years of growing, I think those quieter skills may become more valuable again. Not because we can control the world, but because small practical things still matter. And growing even a little food is one of them. And that's also one reason I created the app called Your Growing Companion, not to replace gardening, but simply to help people stay organized, understand the seasons a little better, and reduce some of the overwhelm that modern life often creates. Anyway, those are just a few thoughts from the garden today. And I'd be very interested to hear whether your own thinking about gardening is changing too. So please do let me know your thoughts. Until next time, happy growing.